The first time Yuriko Kurosawa handed Nia the small cup, she smiled and called it the guest cup. The last time she handed Nia a cup, she was on her knees, and her hands would not stop shaking. A house tells you exactly what it thinks of you. It does it in the size of the cup. Nia Kurasawa was 34, married 2 years, and in 2 years, nobody in that family had said her name out loud. They called her the guest. Her husband heard none of it. That is what they believed. Dai Kurasawa was a quiet man. He ran a house that other men were careful around. He sat at dinner. He said almost nothing. They thought that was weakness. Stay with me tonight. You will hear a woman apologize to Nia in front of 19 people, on her knees, and you will find out what that quiet husband had been doing for 11 months. Before we get into it, tap subscribe. It is free, and it helps this channel more than you know. And drop a comment telling me where you are watching from tonight. I read all of them. Now let me take you into that house. Nia was not raised soft. Her father ran a small import shop in Yokohama, and it was going under when she was 19. She sat down with 4 years of his books. She found the leak in 9 days. It was a shipping agent, and it was small, and it had been running for 6 years. She saved that shop. She ran it for 11 years after her father's stroke. That is who she was, a woman who could look at a page of numbers and see the lie inside it. She met Daichi over a delivery dispute. He came in expecting to intimidate a shop owner. He left having lost an argument about invoices. He came back the next week. He said it was about the invoices. It was not about the invoices. They married quietly, and then she moved into the big house above the river, and the temperature dropped 40 degrees. The mother-in-law was Yuriko Kurosawa, 68 years old, widow of a man everybody still whispered about, and she had run that household for 30 years. She never raised her voice. Not once. In 2 years. That is important. Cruelty in that house was polite. It came out at the correct volume, with the correct posture, in front of witnesses who could later say nothing had happened. And the cousin was Miyu. Miyu Kurosawa was 30 and lovely, and she laughed at everything Yuriko said, 1/2 second too early. Here is the specific thing. The named thing. The one I want you to carry. Every tea service in that house used the family set. 9 cups, all the same, all 140 years old. Nia was given a 10th cup, smaller, different clay. Yuriko bought it new in a shop in Kyoto, and she presented it like a gift. She said, "This one is for our guest. 2 years, every dinner, every visit, every New Year, the guest cup. Remember it. You are going to need it at the end of this story." There was a photograph, too. Their first summer. The family took the formal portrait they take every 5 years, the kind you hang in a hallway. 22 people on the steps. Nia was asked to hold the coats. She stood off to the side with 4 jackets over her arm and watched her husband's family arrange themselves by rank. It took 11 minutes. Nobody called her over. That photograph hangs in the hallway of the big house. You can walk past it today and count the people in it. Her husband saw that picture every morning for 2 years and said nothing. Keep that in mind. It matters later. Then came New Year. 15 people in the main room. The good table. The whole family, and the old man from Osaka who decided things, and the cousins who never spoke to her. Yuriko had set 14 places. Nia stood in the doorway and counted twice, because she thought she must be wrong. Yuriko looked up and said, "Oh, an honest mistake." Nobody moved. Nobody offered a seat. And Nia Kurasawa, wife of the head of that house, ate New Year dinner standing at the kitchen counter, alone, while her family laughed 40 feet away. That is the moment I want you to sit with. If you have ever been in a room where everyone agrees to pretend nothing happened, you already know exactly how quiet that kitchen was. And Miyu came in for more rice. She saw Nia standing there with a plate. She smiled. She said, "It suits you, actually. You have always looked more comfortable near a kitchen." Then, she took the rice and went back to the laughing. Nia did not cry in the kitchen. She was better than that. She waited until the guests left. Then, she went out to the garden, behind the old plum tree, where the security lights do not reach. And she cried the way people cry when they have been holding something for 2 years. She did not know her husband was standing on the veranda, 12 feet away, in the dark. Dai Kurasawa had come home early. He had been in the side hallway during dinner. He had heard the count. He had heard an honest mistake. He had heard his cousin talk about the kitchen. He said nothing to anyone that night. He went upstairs before Nia came in, so she would not know he had seen her. That is the thing about very quiet men. Their silence is almost never agreement. Sometimes it is arithmetic. The next morning he asked her a strange question. He said, "Why did you stop wearing yellow?" She said she had not. He said, "You had a yellow coat. You wore it for the first 6 months. Then you stopped." Nia did not answer, and he did not push. What she did not say was this. Yuriko had once told her, in front of 4 women, that yellow was a very loud color on her. That was all. 9 words. She had put the coat in a bag and never worn it again. 2 weeks later, a box came to the house. Inside was a coat. Yellow, there was no note. There was no conversation about it. He never mentioned the box, then or ever. Nia wore it to breakfast the next morning, and her husband looked up and looked back down at his paper, and something at the corner of his mouth moved. He also started doing something small and constant. He began pouring her tea himself. Not from the 10th cup. He would take one of the 9, fill it, and set it in front of her without a word. Yuriko would take it away and replace it with the guest cup. He would pour again. Every single time. For 11 months. Neither of them ever said one word about it, and everybody at that table watched it happen. That, right there, was the whole war. 2 people passing a cup back and forth in total silence. Other small things started happening that spring. Ren, her husband's second, began greeting her first when he came through the door. Before Yuriko. Every time. It was a tiny thing, and it broke a 30-year rule in that house, and Ren did it in front of everybody, on purpose, for 11 months. Daishi began taking his lunch from her father's shop. He never said the food was good. He just ate it, 3 days a week, and let people see the wrapper on his desk. And once, in the car, he told her the plum tree in the garden was planted by his grandmother, and that nobody in the family had watered it in years. Nia started watering it. He noticed. He said nothing about that either. Now, you might be asking the obvious question, why did she stay? You would probably ask it too. People ask it like it is a simple question. She stayed because she had watched her own father lose a business he loved, and she knew what leaving costs a person who has nothing waiting. She stayed because her husband poured her tea every night in front of a woman who took it away. And she stayed because she had already decided something. If they were going to look through her, she would let them. Being underestimated in a house like that is not a wound. It is a position. You will see what she did with it in about 5 minutes. Meanwhile, something else was moving in that house. The Kurosawa family held the contract for a shipping yard in Kobe. It was old money, and it was clean money, and it paid for everything, and the numbers had started coming in wrong. Nia noticed it by accident. Yuriko had asked her to carry the household ledgers to the accountant as a chore, the way you hand a bag to staff. Nia read them in the car. 9 days later, she knew. The leak was small. It was clever. It was routed through a freight agency in Nagoya, and it had been running for 4 years. And every authorization carried the same second signature. Miyu Kurosawa. 2 days before she brought it to him, Miyu came to see her. She was smiling. She always was. She said she had heard Nia was helping with the ledgers now, and that it was sweet, and that a shopkeeper should be careful reading things she was not trained to read. Then, she said, Aunt Yuriko can have you sent home. She has done it before. Ask about the first wife. Nia said nothing. She had learned that from her husband. But that night, she photographed every page. Nia took it to her husband on a Sunday morning, at the kitchen table, with 3 pages of notes. He read them. Then he looked at her for a long moment. He said, "How long did this take you?" She said 9 days. He said it took my accountants 11 months. And that was when Nia understood what he had already been doing all year. He had known since spring. He had not known who. Now he did. He said one thing more. He said, "Say nothing. Not to anyone. Especially not to my mother." She asked him why, and he said, "Because on the 12th she will be sitting in a room where she cannot walk out." The 12th was the succession ceremony. The old man from Osaka would formally hand the family seal to Daichi. 19 people would attend. Every branch of the family. Every senior man. Yuriko had spent 4 months planning it. She had chosen the room, the order of seating, and the tea service. She had also decided, without asking anyone, that Nia would not sit at the family table. She would sit at the side, with the accountants and the drivers. That is where Nia was seated on the 12th. Third from the end. Facing the wall. The ceremony began the way those things do. Slowly, politely, 19 people on the good tatami, and nobody's back touching anything. The elder spoke about Daichi's father for 6 minutes. Then he called for the tea. And Yuriko rose, because pouring at a succession is an honor, and she had assigned it to herself. She carried the tray to the family table. 9 cups. Then Daichi Kurosawa said, "Stop." He had not raised his voice. He did not need to. He said, "My wife is at the wrong table." Nobody breathed. Ren, his second, was already moving. He carried a cushion to the head of the table and set it at Daichi's right hand. Nia's legs did not want to work. She stood up anyway. She crossed that room in front of 19 people, and she sat down where the wife of the head of the house sits. Then her husband said the sentence that ended the Kurosawa family as it had been. He said, "Mother, tell them what you said at New Year." Yuriko smiled. She said she did not understand. He said, "You set 14 places for 15 people. Say the words you said to her." The room was so quiet you could hear the kettle. He said it a 3rd time. And Yuriko Kurosawa, in front of the elder and every senior man in that family, said, "An honest mistake." Daichi said, "She ate standing up in the kitchen. In my house. On New Year." Then he turned his head slightly. He said, "Miyu, come here." And this is where it stopped being about a dinner. Ren set a folder in front of the elder. Nagoya, 4 years. 61 authorizations, 2 signatures, and the second one the same every time. Miyu started to talk. Daichi let her, for about 9 seconds, and then he said, "My wife found it in 9 days. Your aunt handed her the books as a chore." 19 people turned and looked at the woman they had been calling the guest for 2 years. The elder asked Nia one question. He asked how she was so certain. She answered him for 4 minutes, without notes, in a voice that did not shake once. Freight weights, port fees, a gap of 11% that only made sense one way. When she finished, the elder set down his cup, and he bowed to her, not a nod. A bow, from the waist, held. 19 people watched a man who had never bowed to anyone in that room bow to a woman seated at a wall table 20 minutes earlier. Then, everyone else had to. That is how those rooms work. Miyu was walked out by 2 of Ren's men before the tea went cold. She was not touched. She simply stopped existing to that family, which is worse, and everybody there knew it. And then Daichi looked at his mother. He said, "Pour the tea." Yuriko lifted the pot. Her hands were shaking so badly the lid rattled. He said, "Not that one. My wife's cup is on the shelf in the west room. The small one. Bring it." Somebody went and got it. The 10th cup. The guest cup. 2 years of it. Daichi took it, held it up so the room could see it, and set it down in front of his mother. He said, "That one is yours now. You will use it in this house until I say otherwise." Then he poured his wife's tea into the oldest cup on the tray, the one his father drank from. Yuriko Kurosawa knelt and bowed to her son's wife. She held it for a long time. Nobody told her when to come up, so she stayed down, and the whole room watched her stay down. And then Daichi said one more thing to the room, and it was the smallest sentence of the day. He said, "There is a photograph in my hallway with my wife missing from it. That is being retaken on Sunday." 19 people understood exactly what they had been part of. Nia did not enjoy it. You might expect her to say she did. What she says is that she sat very still and thought about her father, and about a shop in Yokohama, and about a 19-year-old girl who taught herself to read a ledger because nobody else would. After that day, things were simple. Yuriko moved to the small house on the west side. Her allowance continued, because Nia asked that it continue, which Yuriko has never once thanked her for. Nia's name went into the family register the following month. She kept the shop in Yokohama. She runs it still. She wears the yellow coat. And her husband, who is not a talkative man, said one thing about all of it. A week later, in the garden, he said, "I was not being patient. I was being sure." She asked him why he had never stopped his mother at the table. He told her the truth. He said that if he had corrected Yuriko in private, the family would have gone on treating his wife as a guest, and simply done it more quietly. He said it had to be a room they could not leave. That is the difference between anger and a plan. Anger is loud on the day. A plan waits for the 12th. Here is what this story is really about. Silence is not agreement. People think a quiet man in a hard room is a weak man. Sometimes he is just counting. And the woman everybody hands the small cup to is very often the only person in your house who can read the books. If you made it this far, tell me in the comments, what was the exact moment you stopped scrolling? The 14 places, the yellow coat, or the cup? And if you know a woman who has been the guest in a family for years, send this to her tonight. She needs to hear how this one ends.